Welcome to the first episode of Context Matters. My name is Rob Kepke. I'm here with Nick Moreland. How we doing, Nick?
I'm doing pretty good today. I have a nice breakfast tea with some almond milk and some organic sugar. I'm feeling great. How you feeling?
I'm feeling good. It's not quite the proper British way for the tea, right?
It's not, but I didn't want coffee because it hurts my stomach, and I want to make sure I perform at the highest level for my audience.
It's good. Glad to hear it. So, just a little background, as you guys probably don't know us as well as we'd like you to. So I am an entrepreneur and a digital marketer. My background is kind of eclectic. I started in the fitness industry, and from there was head coach, general manager at a gym, ended up transitioning into owning my own gyms, and then made my way into the startup space where I worked for an e-commerce tech startup, a fintech startup. I've done enterprise marketing, demand generation, so kind of all over the map here. And for me, and I'll get into this more in a second, that kind of background is what led me to decide I wanted to do this podcast of Context Matters. But first, I want to give Nick a chance to introduce himself and tell you guys about him.
All right, well, Nick Moreland, started out as a musician, was working in the restaurant industry, just having the lowest rent possible and the most days available to create my art. Played in bands for a long time, recorded a lot of music, produced everything myself, all the instruments. And then eventually I ended up selling all my music stuff and moving to Central America, where I fell back in love with my camera, taking photos, making videos. Decided while I was abroad, I would come home and make that my focus. And for the past almost 2 years, I've just been going heavy on the camera, learning as much as I can, learning new skills, and just really deciding that this is the path that I want to be on for the foreseeable future. And here I am now. That's how we reconnected. I actually took an environmental portrait session for a common friend of ours from high school I haven't seen in like 12 years. I did a great job. He liked the photos, and then through his connection with Rob, he recommended me, and now we're reconnecting. So everything's coming full circle, and that's what this episode is right now.
Yeah, definitely the culmination of a lot of, well, I guess the divergence of a lot of different paths. And like we went to high school together, would sit at lunch together, and it's been a long time since we actually had been in touch.
Yeah.
But, thanks to our mutual friends, we're back hanging out, creating content, because it's something we both love doing.
Yeah, so we're gonna get started with this show. I believe Rob has a couple interesting points he'd like to make.
Yeah, so the kind of overall focus of today's show is where you start with your digital marketing, or with your marketing in general. But before I get into that, what I do want to talk about is why the name Context matters. And I alluded to this a little bit, but I do want to get into a little bit more behind the scenes there. So I mentioned my background is very eclectic, and I've kind of been across multiple industries, done as an owner, as somebody who services clients with my agency, my digital marketing agency, and then also working for startups. And what I've seen along the way, and working with freelancers as well, right? So what I've seen along the way is that advice that's given, and this is not only specific to just the business world or marketing, but in general, it tends to be given without context.
Yeah.
And when advice is given without context, could potentially be dangerous. At the worst case, it's useless, right? And it could potentially be dangerous and end up in lost resources, right? Wasted time, wasted money. And so the point of this podcast is to provide contextualized advice, specific to business, specific to marketing in general, just because that's my background. But yeah, that's kind of what the idea here is, and what the focus on the content we create is going to be.
So how would you grow? Let's say, let's say you wanted to start a small business in this area, and you wanted to grow, but you wanted to know what's the best way to invest your funds in a worthwhile marketing plan. Like, how would you go about if a client wants more reach, they're small scale, they're local, and they don't want to waste too many resources in getting a result?
Yeah, so I'm glad you started with that question.
Yeah.
That wasn't quite planned, but I like that.
Oh.
No, it was great because this is typically where people start, right?
Yeah.
They start with, how do I get the word out about my business? I've created this thing that is amazing and I want to tell the world. And that is not the best way to go about it.
Yeah.
Right? Because business isn't about us, the creator, right? Business is about the person. What we're doing is we are solving problems. You know, as any interaction with the business, you're solving a problem. You know, you as a photographer, videographer, right? You're solving a problem of, on surface level, somebody needs headshots, somebody needs video, somebody needs podcasts, somebody needs a recording. But it goes deeper than that, right? You're solving the problem of this business wants to make more money because they think if they create these headshots, then they're going to provide a more professional appearance, and that professional appearance will help them close clients.
Yeah.
And then it goes even deeper than that, right? It's, well, why do they want to grow the business? Why do they want more money? And there's layers and layers and layers to it. And at the very end of the day, it's the emotional response that we're trying to elicit, right?
Yeah.
And the reason that we don't want to start with not the reason we don't want to start there, where we actually want to start instead of how do I get the word out is, who am I serving, right?
Yeah.
What problem am I looking to solve, and who is the audience that I'm looking to solve that for? You know, and it's tempting as a business, as a freelancer, and I'm guilty of this numerous times and a lot of learning, by my mistakes. It's tempting to say, I do this thing for everyone, right? And it isn't necessarily untrue, right? As a photographer who does headshots, anyone who needs headshots, you can service, right? But it's not how we think, you know? And so the goal of the business, or the goal of the freelancer, or the goal of the entrepreneur is to identify first, who do I want to target, right? And just sticking with this example of like a freelance photographer, right? Since we're here, maybe instead of saying I do headshots, you say I do headshots for commercial businesses, right? Like businesses that just specialize in like you do industrial headshots. That's a good example.
Do industrial, or you could do, like yesterday I was on a shoot and it was doctors. It was an entire office building full of doctors who all needed their headshots. Very important, especially for doctors in their practice, that the way people perceive their headshot is, this is someone that I can trust to evaluate my health and to cure me. And so I feel like a good headshot is important for everyone, but specific things like, the medical field, where perception is, extremely important. It's just, that's a specific place that you could target your energy, and there's an audience always willing, always ready, always there, who needs that service. So.
Yeah. And so let's see what happens when you narrow that focus, right? In terms of you as a freelancer who's looking to get more business, right? So now, instead of saying, I target everyone who's looking for headshots, you say, I target doctors who need headshots. I target the health field, or the medical field, right? So now you've narrowed your focus, and the first thought is gonna be like, well, I'm gonna miss out on all of these opportunities, right? Because I've narrowed my focus. But in reality, what you've done is you are now able to concentrate all of your resources to that specific field. And now when you go to market, assuming, or some assumptions we need to make here, that your service is good, that you have the skill set behind you, right? Those are kind of the other steps that you have to go to before you get to the actual distribution, or how do I find people? But now you can just say, okay, where are these people, right? And then you go to where those people are. Now, this is when you start getting a little more tactical. But now you can say, well, if I run Facebook ads, now I can run Facebook ads towards people who have like doctor in their title, or you run LinkedIn ads to people who have an MD right, in their name, or you find Facebook groups and you're part of them, right? But so, and now it becomes much easier to find that audience first. And now also, because you would have case studies of those people, of those past businesses that you've done work with, now it's going to be much easier for you to go and say, hey, other doctors, I did this stuff with these doctors and had these, versus going, you know, hey, payroll company, I did these photos for these doctors, right? And it's not quite as easy. You know, it still could work if they're looking at the quality of it. But when we talk about, you know, businesses, relatively speaking, all businesses have limited time and limited resources. Whether you're a freelancer or, you know, a huge, you know, multinational business, right? You always are going to have, relatively speaking, limited time and resources. And so you need to be able to focus those so that you can execute properly. And then once you have that strategy in place, then you can start deciding where it's best to go. Maybe it's Google Ads, maybe it's networking, maybe it's Facebook ads, social media, LinkedIn, whatever it is.
Well, going back before, I think it's twofold, because if you know, are narrowing like your niche, you know, if you're finding like the avenue, the alleyway that you're going to pursue, you're also defining your competition, and it's much easier to know who you're competing against when you go from something broad, as just anyone who does headshots, to people who does headshots of the medical field, and then you see specifically what work, what content, what level of work is being put out in my area. You know, that's my direct competition, and then it's easier to come up with a game plan, because it's not like a broad, like, you know, kind of battle that you're facing. You're like, could specifically, these are the people providing the services where I live. Like, look at their pricing, look at their packaging, look at the content they're creating, and then, you know, use that to base off of your strategy, so you can separate yourself from that narrow pack and that narrow niche. Or that's just how I would see it. That's the first thing I would do. If I specifically wanted to do doctors, I would look like at, like I said, like the people specifically doing that in my area, and then like I don't really have to waste that many resources in trying to get new clients, because I can just see what's something I could do different from what they're doing. Or, I mean, you could kind of price gouge, kind of just go down a little bit more than them and then see what happens. Or, you know, develop your strategy off theirs. And then maybe in the process, you'll kind of redefine like the whole kind of field for that specific niche in your area.
Yeah, and I think you hit on a couple things that I want to circle back to. The price gouging is one of them. We'll come back to that potentially. But yeah, no, it's exactly like, it's just being able to narrow your focus. And it seems so counterintuitive, especially for people new to business. It's a problem that startups have a bunch. It's a problem I see working with like my local business clients. You know, their taglines are, you know, we serve everyone, you know, and it's kind of like, and it's, again, it's out of this fear of the market, when you segment it down, being too small. And so, you know, I think there is some sort of, you have to be realistic, right? You can't say like, I serve doctors who, I don't know, are in like this one specific area who only do these very, very specific procedures, because then you're going to be incredibly limited to like one person.
Well, I only photograph a podiatrist in Reston, Virginia.
That might actually be a decent size.
Well, just to go off that, it'd be like, if you just said I only
who specialize in removing bunions. Like, then that's too narrow.
But then you also, let's say, you know, you want to do stock foot photography, then you also have the patients coming in, so you hit it from both ends. So I mean, really, you could turn a dead end alley into a tributary. It just depends on how you flip the coin.
So that's a good segue, because like I said, the mistake people have are there's this fear of narrowing down your audience too much. But what ends up happening is you narrow it down to a specific size, right? You cater to that specific size, you see results, right? And you continue to plow your resources, time and money, right, back into that same audience. And then you can start expanding from there, right? Versus, you know, starting wide, looking all over the place, and like I said, there's going to be a lot of wasted resources.
Yeah.
And so maybe you see there's these tangential, markets that you can go into. You start as podiatrist, photographer, and then you go into the foot shops or whatever they're called.
Yeah, well, I feel like it can lead, like also, when you look at photography, like people that do wedding photography and family photography, right? They kind of lead into one another. You do a really good job at someone's wedding, well, guess what? They might have some kids later, and then baby photos, graduation photos. It's just like you can find like an audience and almost make like a lifelong consumer of a product if you pursue it the right way. And it's like you're growing with your clients as they're moving along in life, and you're moving along and you're capturing like the different stages.
Yeah.
If you do the family photography and the wedding photography together, and then kind of get in that cycle and that rhythm of this client's journey.
Right. Yeah.
And they might want you to be at the milestones because you were at their initial milestone, which was the marriage.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And so kind of to circle back and button that up a little bit more. If you're a business, whether you're starting out or you've been around for a long time, right, and you're doing your marketing or you go to it, right, the first question you ask is, who is this for?
Yeah.
Versus how do we get the word out? Because once you have a clear vision of who this is for, then it'll be much easier to identify where to get the word out or how to get the word out. And again, from my experience, we, as an agency, we offer different services like Facebook ads and LinkedIn ads and Google ads. And I think part of something I struggle with, and that's like a gift and a curse, because I have such broad experience. When a business comes to me and they're like, we want Google ads, my first response isn't, okay, cool, let's do it.
Yeah.
My first response is, do you actually need this? Which isn't great for business in general. Like if I wanted to, just secure that client, right? Yeah. But my response is, like, do you actually need this, right? What else are you doing? Who are you targeting? Is the audience that you're targeting going to be on Google, right? There's some businesses who cater to an audience where somebody's not going to be searching for what you do, right? You're too specific, or it's just not something they keep in mind. And that business would be better doing like Facebook ads or LinkedIn ads or Pinterest or email or something else entirely. Yeah. And so like I was saying, it's that's why it's important for the business to start out as, who is this for? So what I want to talk about now is these 5 steps for marketing. And this is according to Seth Godin, who's personal kind of favorite marketer of mine, or one of top 3. Okay. But he's written tons of bestsellers, just really overall smart guy, and he's kind of laid out the backbone of what marketing is. And what I really like about it is it just kind of digs deep into what we were talking about earlier. Of you don't start with distribution. You don't start with spreading the word. Yeah. You start with who you're serving.
Makes sense.
And so these 5 steps, I'll go through them, and then if it makes sense, we can talk about each point a little bit more, dive in a little bit deeper.
Sure. Let's see what Seth's got cooking.
Yep. So first step when you're marketing a product is to create a product or service that's actually worth talking about. Right. Step number 2 is design it and build it in a way that a few people will particularly benefit from and actually care about it. Step 3 is to tell a story that matches the built-in narrative and dreams of a tiny group of people, aka the smallest viable market. Step 4 is now to go out and spread the word. And then step 5 is to show up regularly, consistently, and generously for years and years. So let's start with point 1.
All right.
So create a product or service worth talking about. So for me, what that means is creating something that is better than average. It's like, and the reason for this is because if you create an average thing, the best that you can do is average. And this is where a lot of people struggle, and you especially see it in commodity type businesses, service area businesses in particular, right? You're an accountant, or you're a doctor, or you're a photographer. I'm not saying it's bad being one of those, but you can't just say, if you want an easier path to marketing your product, you can't just be an average or okay, professional, a photographer, accountant, doctor, etc. Right? And you can do certain things, right, to make your product or service worth talking about. You can have extraordinary customer service. You can be incredibly receptive to your clients, right? You can provide them with in-depth knowledge every time you come and interact with them, But that's the important part, is layering in something that is unique and makes you different, and again, is actually worth talking about.
Yeah.
Make sense?
You can't make a filet mignon out of a piece of tilapia. That's very low fish.
Yes. All right, so then step 2, design it and build it in a way that a few people will particularly benefit from and care about it. And so I think this goes back to what we were talking about earlier, where you have to not just build something, but you have to build something for somebody.
Yeah.
One of the things that I think we fall, in a trap with is we always think our ideas are the best.
Yeah.
Right? I created this thing and the world's going to love it. And if the world doesn't, the world is stupid.
Well, that's what the whole premise of Shark Tank is, right?
Yes. So, what we need to do instead is we need to be humble, right? We need to realize and understand that our ideas aren't necessarily the best, And in the marketplace, right, in the world, what matters isn't what we think, it matters what the customer thinks.
That's why it's to work smart. Just because you work hard and spend hours and hours and hours creating something, it doesn't mean that the worth it has for you is going to have the same worth out in the world. So,
right.
Yeah,
exactly. And so it'll save you a lot of time bashing your head against the wall if you realize and are humble enough to say, maybe this idea, or maybe what I'm doing isn't what people want.
Yeah.
Now there's a difference between saying this isn't what people want in general and saying this isn't for you.
Yeah.
Right? This isn't for you is knowing who your product or service is for, and then saying this is, you don't fit into the demographic of who I served, so you don't like it, or you're a troll and you're hating on me, but it's like, hey, this isn't for you.
Yeah.
It's for somebody else.
It's like if I invested all my money into creating a line of high fashion cat diapers, I know that it's gonna be a very, very niche thing, and it's a very weak idea to build an entire business around. I don't know why that example came to my head.
Well, but also, your audience isn't dog diaper owners.
It's not.
Right? So dog diaper owners, or dog owners, are like, this is stupid.
It's absurd to talk about this.
Stupid.
It's absurd to talk about this, but in my family is a 15-year-old dog that requires diapers. So as crazy as you think it sounds, someone has built a business around providing diapers for cats and dogs. So
and they're not, who are they for, right? They're not for people who don't own pets. They're not for dog owners who don't need diapers,
And it's not, they might be cheaper than diapers for children, but there's a hole for the tail, so it just won't work. So if you're trying to save money, it's not like, you're going to get some spillover from people that don't want to pay a premium price for.
Well, I think that was that probably wasn't intentional. That was probably a feature for the diapers, right? You don't want to have a scrunched up tail on a diaper.
Basically, I just wanted to use an example that isn't like the everyday example that people use. So I'm like, what's something absurd I can think of that actually has a market built around it that we could talk about that's fresh for the viewer? Yeah. I'm sure they haven't heard it on a podcast, someone talking about the marketing behind those things before. So that's why I went to left field and I picked it. But arguably, it's still relevant to what you're talking about. It's just an absurd example that exists in the world.
No, and there's tons of absurd examples like that are out there. And I think tying that back into what we were talking about before about narrowing down and niching down your audience, it's like there are millions of niches,
Yeah.
right, that are big enough for you. And so, and I think the thing that is so great about the internet is it makes it way easier to go find those niches.
Yeah.
Right. And, there are just communities and communities of people that don't, think or have the same interests that we do. Right. But it doesn't mean they don't exist. And I think a lot of times the internal kind of voice in our head, we assume people are like us. And what we need to do is assume people are not like us, especially as a marketer in particular, who as a general marketer, but as a specific, solopreneur or entrepreneur or, marketer of a business in a specific niche. It's still important to get inside the head of your audience and understand their hopes and their desires and their dreams so you can market to them. It's potentially easier if you're offering services or products that you yourself consume, because then you just need to know yourself, and it's much, much easier.
Yeah.
But if you're doing something that is outside of that, which is a lot of, we do that, not a ton, but a decent amount. We're working with businesses that we might not have necessarily, purchased something from before, or like whatever. But we have to spend the time doing the research and understanding who it is that they care about and who it is that they're going after. And we have to, again, be humble enough to know, just because it's not for us, like, we're trying to be professionals, right? And this is a business who people care about. And just because it's not for us doesn't mean people don't care about it, and doesn't mean it's not a worthwhile business.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. All right, so step 3. Tell a story that matches the built-in narrative and dreams of a tiny group of people, AKA the smallest viable market.
Okay.
So what I find interesting about this is basically we, as a person, individual, we have like specific slices and subsegments of our identity, right? So I'll take myself for example, right? I love Warby Parker glasses. Absolutely love them, right? I have 3 pairs, I think. I hopped on the Warby Parker bandwagon way before it was took off.
They all look great on you, so.
Thank you, I appreciate that. So I love Warby Parker because of the way that it makes me feel, and the identity that I have wearing them. Right?
Yeah.
And I like people complimenting me, telling me how good I look, right? But then I wear those, or maybe I'm an avid Mac user, right? That's another slice, right? The Mac user might have some overlap with the Warby Parker user, but all of them don't overlap 100%.
Yeah.
Right? And you can take yourself and your identity. I love basketball, love the NBA, right? That's another slice. Maybe there's some overlap, but, and the same thing for you, right? I'm sure there's different slices.
Well, I don't like basketball or the NBA, so.
Right. So we don't even, there's no overlap.
There is no overlap.
And again, as a marketer, you need to be humble enough to know that.
Yeah.
Right? And when you have, your business that you're trying to market, right, your job is to identify the smallest viable group, right? The smallest group of people who can sustain your business.
Yeah.
That you can align the story of your business with their worldview, right?
Gotcha.
And each of these kind of segments that I described, right? Warby Parker, they go all in on a specific worldview. Tom's shoes, very, very good example.
I was about to say Tom's,
right?
So, yeah.
They go deep on a specific worldview. And the worldview that they go in on is this, I want to look fashionable and I want to look cool.
Yeah.
But I also want to be charitable and I want to give. And so I know that every time I buy a pair of shoes, not only am I looking good, but I'm giving back, right, to somebody. They're give a pair, buy a pair, give a pair program.
So their content, a lot of it is abroad, showing the impact of the individual consumers purchased on this pair of shoes, and that goes into the narrative, which you're kind of tugging at people's heartstrings of that, because they're buying something and then you're also putting out what is actually benefiting, and then that gets ingrained in their head. So it's just that connection, that identity of buying this commodity and it, improving this other aspect of life somewhere else.
Yeah.
So it's not just a empty consumption.
Yeah, and what's really important that they've done is they went all in on it, right?
Yeah.
That is at the fabric of the story of the company. And as you alluded to, all of their materials and how they present themselves, it aligns with that. And so they decided that they wanted a story to tell. They found a group of people who that story would resonate with, and then they go all in over and over and over again with their materials on this story.
Yeah.
Right? And they do it with the sustainability factor that they have in their stuff, right? And they do it with, their materials of, being overseas or in third world countries and, the pictures and the impact that they provide. They just go all in 100% on that identity.
Yeah.
All right. So now we come to number 4, which is finally spread the word.
All right.
And again, this was basically the entire premise of this first episode is spread the word, and how you get the word out is really not the top priority until you've taken the time to go through and answer these specific questions or make sure that you have answers to these specific points.
Yeah.
And then once you have that, now it's much, much easier to say, okay, we want to go after these people who want to be fashionable, who believe that things should be sustainable and that they want to feel good about their purchases, right? Where do you go find those people? And that now enables you to say, okay, now that I know who I want to go after, I can find them in these specific groups on Facebook. I can create meetups, right, that targets the interests and wants and needs of these people. I can create content. Maybe I'll have an SEO strategy, so I want to start creating content that's going to rank in Google, but this is who I want to target after, and this is who the content should appeal to.
Yeah.
Facebook ads, right? They have such narrow targeting. You can get so granular with your targeting, and now you know who you're going after, right? So again, it's not the first thing you do. This is step 4 in a long process. And I think what is so difficult about this for a lot of people is it takes empathy, right?
Yeah.
It takes you it requires you taking the time to understand what's going on in other people's head.
Yeah.
Right? It requires patience because you're just like, I want to go, right?
Yeah.
I want to get this out here. I want to start.
Yeah.
Right? And it takes humility of you to say, hey, let me not assume things about people. Let me not assume that what I'm saying is the best. Let me not assume that everyone else is stupid because they don't agree with me. But let me actually take the time to see what they actually feel and how they think.
Yeah, I mean, it's like if you don't do that, it's like promoting like a big show, but you're still trying to form the band. And then the pressure of trying to perform and trying to be ready while you're still preparing what the final product is even going to be to be put on the shelf for someone to consume.
Yeah.
If that analogy works.
No, it does, and I think it's interesting because I think I have thoughts on the difference between like an artist and I don't know the word, I haven't thought of what exactly it is, but like an artist and like a business who creates.
Yeah.
I think the difference is who you create for.
Yeah.
I'll have to think about that a little more before I fully endorse that thought process.
Well, if you're an artist and you're creating something that speaks to you and tapping into something, deep inside that you feel that can tap into like the universal sentiment,
Yeah.
That's different because you're not doing that because like someone is giving you a list of things you need to create. Like you need to create, a bunch of like highlight clips from this football game and we need them done in the next hour and they got to be ready for broadcast. Like that's a different kind of like method of creating than at feeling something naturally call you spontaneously and then creating that way than having someone tell you what to create like for a job.
Yeah, that's interesting. Actually, we should dive back into that in another episode because I think this concept of creating art and creating like a business, like there's both creation involved.
Yeah.
And I think it's fascinating to me because, and your background is more of an artist, way more than mine in any capacity. But I think there's this difference between creating something for yourself and then having it blow up, which I think is very lucky, right? Or systematically creating something of worth for others.
Yeah.
And it's not right or wrong. I think it's more just what your goals are as an individual, I think there are these cases of people who create and then blow up because their stuff resonated with the larger community, right? But there's also people who create and create and create and they don't do that. And it's if their goal is to be like famous or make money off the art that they're doing,
Yeah.
they need to understand that they're going to have to change how they're creating to make sure that it's actually worthwhile for the people that they're creating for.
Yeah.
Yeah. So interesting. We should put a pin in that and dive back into that at some point.
Well, I'll be around. I don't plan on cashing out and retiring in Nicaragua for at least another 5 years.
Okay, fair enough.
All right.
That's good. All right, point number 5. Last point here in the 5 steps for marketing, according to Seth Godin. Show up regularly, consistently, and generously for years and years. So I think, again, this is something that is oft overlooked because it's hard.
Yeah.
And we were just talking about this off camera a little bit. Gary Vaynerchuk, he's, I would say, up there again with Seth Godin in terms of the marketers that I follow and admire. And he's like pretty famous now. But for years and years, he was just putting out content. He would sit there in front of a camera and he would taste wines.
Yeah.
And then he would give reviews of those wines. And when he first started, nobody watched. And then nobody watched.
Probably only his parents watched him.
Probably they probably didn't even watch.
That's because he would bring the computer in and put it on the kitchen table during dinner and force them to watch it. So you got to start from somewhere.
Right, exactly. And so he ended up doing this. Right, created 1,000 episodes of the show, and by the time you get to 1,000 episodes, it's either you're going to be putting out something good, or you're just like super not in touch with reality, and so at that point he's had something there, and then since then he's been creating content on the regular, and so what he has done is he's just shown up, right? He's shown up, he's created, he's give value, he provides value all the time, and it's hard to do.
Yeah.
I think as humans and what we want, right, we always say, or we always have this goal of, if I just do this one thing, I'll hit it big and then I can retire.
Yeah.
And that's just not how it works.
It's just like a lottery pipe dream.
Right, exactly. And so the key to being a true professional, right, the key to being the key to like long-term success is showing up, providing value over and over and over again, and falling in love with the process of providing value versus looking for that like quick fix moment.
Yeah.
And I think it's kind of looking for the feedback along the way. People, commenting and saying that your stuff resonates with them. That is what you need to continue to put out content and continue to market yourself as a business and show up day in and day out. Because for a lot of people, it's not going to happen right away.
Well, also it serves as authenticity and validation. The fact that you are that consistent, then in the perception of the public, they always perceive you as out there doing this thing and doing it every day. Then it just adds like more value to your brand, because you're not spending all your money on like one huge advertisement and then you just disappear for 6 months, and everyone's thinking like, wow, that was great, like where are these guys now, like why do they just vanish, like why do they put all their eggs in one basket?
Yeah, and that's the beauty of kind of the world we live in right now is social media enables us to show up day in and day out, and the barrier of entry is basically zero. Right? You show up, you post something, and you slowly build an audience up. But nobody's telling you that you can't post. Right? There's tons of trolls out there who are telling you that your stuff is terrible, right? But you didn't make that stuff for them, or they're just a bot that doesn't exist, and you're getting mad about nothing.
Yeah.
Right? So being able to show up, and especially in the digital age, because 30 years ago this wasn't possible to just create content, put it out there over and over and over again until people start to understand like you're a true professional, you're somebody that takes this seriously, and so we should take you seriously, and you're providing us a ton of value along the way, and that's where the trust is built in a brand or an individual.
Yeah.
Right? Cool. So I have a little note here about price gouging. I think we saved that for another episode.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there's a lot to say on that, and I think with these five steps, I think we gave the audience something to savor and think about for until the next episode. We don't want to cover everything on the first one.
Yeah, no system overload. But all right, well, I think thanks, guys. It's a pleasure. I hope people watch it. I hope people listen to it. This will be audio as well, and I hope we provided value for you guys. That's the biggest concern of mine, is that I'm just not up here rambling. We're not rambling and just saying nonsense, but we're taking things that could be of value, and applied to the context of your situation as a business entrepreneur, business owner, whatever it is. So, thanks again, guys. Anything for you?
I think I'm ready to say goodbye. Grab my cart, get back on the metro at Clarendon, and take it to Friendship Heights.
Cool. All right. See you guys next time.
All right.